Good morning, USA. This is Firebug Live, and I'm your host, Chaplain Eric Coe. We're going to start a mini-series here today. This is going to be part one of the mini-series. We're going to take a look at post-traumatic stress disorder and first responders. Now, we all know who first responders are, but let's go through the list. We've got police officers, firefighters, EMS personnel, dispatchers, correctional officers. All these folks are in a category of first responders. Now, let's take a look back. Back when you first became a first responder, we all did this because we want to serve people, we want to help people, we want to make sure our community was safe. And in doing so, a lot of the profession, the industry, takes a look at this Bible verse out of John 15:13. We all just have this saying, that no one has greater love than this, that someone would lay down his life for his friends. We took this oath when we were sworn in, and we wanted to defend our communities. But unfortunately, as time goes by and you see so many things out there in life, something just steps in and it compromises your ability to do this job fully. We all know it as post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, depending on where you're from, what doctor you see, what scientist you've talked to. They're trying to get rid of the D part of PTSD, the disorder word. It's becoming a pretty big stigma out there, and they don't want people walking around having that stigma. I don't know the true facts or the studies of it, but I think I read something that states that 1 in 9 Americans, or 1 in 5 Americans right now, currently have some type of mental health disorder. So, for us to put this so-called stigma on us, we all have something going on in our brains. Some are more serious than others. So, I don't know how to feel about it, really. I don't mind keeping the D on there. That's your call on that, and how you feel about that. So we're going to take a look at that a little bit. And today we're going to talk about PTSD. We're going to talk about some mumbo-jumbo stuff that really, doesn't really, unless you're a brainiac, won't understand some of it, but it might be interesting, something you can look up, do some research on. But post-traumatic stress disorder affects millions of firefighters, police officers, EMS personnel, and other first responders from all around the world. As we said earlier, we see things the public can only imagine, and sometimes you can't even imagine it. For many years, PTSD was once defined as a DSM-4, as an anxiety disorder. If you're familiar with it, there's a diagnostic book out there for mental health behavioral stuff, and that's what it was categorized as. And just a couple years ago, in 2013, they went ahead and redefined it as a DSM-5, which it gives it a little bit more priority, a little bit more, I guess if you will, front line exposure, I guess if you would call it that. If we take a little bit of history about PTSD, during the Vietnam era, they called it shell shock. They've called it battle fatigue syndrome. Some scientists even believe that PTSD started all the way back in the Civil War era. Now, here's what the definition of PTSD is, and it depends where you look at. It has a few different words in it, but this is what I came up with. PTSD is defined as a mental health condition caused by a traumatic event or events such as sexual assault, serious injury, loss of a fellow coworker, loss of a child, loss of a loved one or a patient, natural disasters, the threat of death. or even witnessing a traumatic event or a situation. There's so many different forms of PTSD, and one of them is CPTSD, is a complex where people can watch a rollover accident and see victims be thrown from the vehicle and get a form of PTSD, and they're actually calling that a complex form of PTSD. Now, the symptoms of PTSD, they can come on pretty quickly. Sometimes it takes a few months, sometimes even years before you realize you have it. And most of the time you won't know you have it until somebody points it out. They may do a little research and go, man, something's not right about you. But really, guys, go to a professional, get diagnosed. That's really the true way of knowing if you have it or not. But here's the thing, guys. Not all people who suffer a traumatic event will develop PTSD. Many people go through life seeing traumatic events, and they may have a little difficulty adjusting and coping for a while, but that doesn't mean they have PTSD. They usually come out of it with good self-care and time. They get better. But if you feel like symptoms are getting worse, that are lasting for months or even years, and they interfere with your functioning, your daily lives, you may have it. So definitely seek a professional and have them do some of the proper tests that need to be done out there to get that diagnosed. Now, a normal response to trauma becomes PTSD when you become stuck. After a traumatic experience, the mind and the body are in shock. But as you start coming down from it and you start making sense of what happened and you process your emotions, normally you come out of it. With PTSD, you remain in a psychological shock. The memory of what happened and your feelings about it are disconnected. So in order to move on, it's important to face and feel your memories and emotions. Now, this is kind of the little part of the scientific stuff that I've done some research on, and that gets a little deeper with the body. An individual suffering with PTSD actually experiences a psychological change. The autonomic and central nervous systems are both affected. The hippocampus in the brain decreases in mass, and the amygdala in the brain is overreactive. Memory is a key component to PTSD, guys. The traumatic event is relived constantly in your mind. Both the hippocampus and the amygdala are key in human memory. It plays a very important role in our human memory. It's believed that the amygdala, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, sorry if I'm not, is known as the fear center of the brain. Now, it shouldn't be surprising that PTSD sufferers have an overreactive amygdala. It actually gets bigger. There's some pictures I have posted on my website that show that it just gets bigger. It's amazing seeing the the physical changes of the brain. The amygdala helps the brain establish a connection between fear-producing situations from the past, and because of this conditioning, it pairs them with a stimulus in the present that may be neutral. Now, this incorrect conditioning helps the individual maintain a constant state of hyperarousal because the brain is telling that person, hey, you're safe. The situation's safe. But it's threatening, even though the safe situation may have nothing to do with the prior trauma. Now, the hippocampus in the brain, we just talked about that a little bit. It plays an important role in the learning and memory. Research suggests that the hippocampus attempts to create expectations in situations that may offer rewards and punishments based on memory and past learning. Due to the hippocampal damage in the brain, in those that have PTSD, it may be difficult for the brain to learn new expectations for situations following the traumatic event. Why do some people get PTSD and some people don't? you know, there's researchers out there who say that PTSD was more common in survivors who carried two types of gene varieties associated with depression than non-survivors. You guys, and like I said before, if you're not really much into the science or psychology of things, this won't pertain to you. But if you are, you can look this up. They're saying that the two genes are a COM like Mary, T like Thomas, and the TPH like Thomas, Phil, Harry -2. Now, the first one we were talking about, the COMT gene, it's an enzyme that breaks down dopamine in our brain, a neurotransmitter that controls the brain's reward and pleasure centers, and it helps regulate mood, thinking, attention, and behavior. Now, too much or too little dopamine is an aspect of several neurological and psychological disorders. The second one we were talking about, the TPH2 gene, now that gene regulates the production of serotonin, a brain hormone that helps controls mood, sleep, and alertness, all of which are disrupted in PTSD. Like I said, you can check out my website, later on, and I've got a picture on there that shows two types of brains. One that's a normal brain, and the other one that has a brain of a patient with PTSD, and it shows that amygdala just huge, like double in size. Currently, right now, they're saying approximately 7 to 37% of firefighters meet their criteria for a current diagnosis of PTSD. And the reason why they're saying that is that the rate is so wide due to many factors, whether they're paid or a volunteer, did they take the survey out of a questionnaire or face-to-face interview, and other factors. The bottom line is, who cares how you were surveyed? If you're a first responder and you're in public safety, you definitely have a risk or a chance of developing PTSD. So we're going to stop there. This is the first segment, like I said, and later on we're going to get into more about PTSD on our next segment, such as signs and symptoms, possible treatments out there, breaking news, I guess, if you will, a type of treatments that are going on right now. We're going to have a segment also for family and friends. What can they do to help not only themselves living with someone or being around somebody with PTSD, but also helping the first responder. We're also going to talk about different resources that are out there on who to call or who to get a hold of if you're having a crisis and you need to talk to somebody or go visit somewhere. If you guys want, come check out the website. It's www.emergencythoughts.org. Go on there, take a look at it. It's a whole segment on PTSD. There's a survey on there. There's a spot on there. It's called Speak Your Mind, where you can come on there and tell us about your experience with PTSD, or if you know somebody who has it, and you can share their experience, or you just want to say, hey, this website's awesome, or hey, this thing sucks, whatever. Just come on there and take a look at it. And but until then, guys, keep each other safe. Your coworkers, your brothers and sisters out there. Don't just say, hey, how you doing today? We're good. Okay, that's cool. And if you notice a change in some of your coworkers out there, get in their face. Guys, get out there and get in their face and say, hey, I'm here for you. What's going on, man? Let's talk. I've been your partner for this many years, or I've worked with you this many years. What's going on? So, watch each other's back, love one another, and until next time, fade to black.